Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Rangers lose at Madison Square Garden again. This time 2-1 to the Detroit Red Wings. Rangers dropped to 1-7-1 at home. And they really played like shit in this game. They almost found a way to sneak this game to overtime, but wasn't meant to be. Jonathan Quick did everything he could to make that happen. He made 40 saves on 42 shots, but ultimately Lucas Raymond gets the game-winning goal with less than 4 minutes left in the third period. Rangers outshot 42-19. As I had laid out in the last episode after the Blue Jacket win, and this is by no means excuse making, just the reality that the Rangers were not in a position to succeed here. Like I said, they have not done well in the second game of back-to-backs, all at home, and they don't do well at home in general. And you had Detroit coming off of a really embarrassing loss where they did get a point, but they were up 4-1 home against Buffalo and lost the game. So you add all that up, and I didn't feel great about what would be, but this was even worse than I could have anticipated. And really, the Rangers should have gotten blown out in this one. Mike Sullivan was not behind the bench, was dealing with personal matters. So hope that Mike Sullivan's all right. Think he's attending to his family, and hopefully Sullivan will be good enough and everything's all right for him to make the trip. Remains to be seen, so I'm not going to really speculate on that. So behind the bench, it was split head coaching duties between Joe Sacco and former Ranger head coach David Quinn. So cue the, making fun of Quinn, which, look, I don't totally disagree with. Like, I don't want to make a big deal about that, but just in terms of some of the ice time and just the way they play, but having Sullivan behind the bench is clearly valuable, and maybe it might be one of the most valuable things for this team currently. And that all said, a year from now, 2 years from now, I think that if the Ranger core somewhat stays the same, it won't matter what Mike Sullivan tries to preach. But I think that, that doesn't help matters. And we'll discuss some of the time on ice things with the defense that might not have really been smart. But yeah, just the third period was terrible. They really weren't good in most of this game. But the third period specifically was a fucking joke. And it's a reminder of what this team is. And it's not to take away from what they've done on the road. It's been incredible, 9-1-1. The next 3 games are on the road and what will be probably some tough games, honestly, in Vegas, Colorado, and Utah. But yeah, this is the type of game where they wouldn't have deserved a point, but they were so bad they couldn't even get there. They just couldn't even find their way to and then once it gets to overtime, to be honest with you, at that point, anything really can happen. I would say I think Detroit has the more speed and skill that if it were 3-on-3, I think Detroit would have the advantage, but again, we never got there. But just add it to a long list of bad losses, maybe arguably in some ways the worst, but it's not even fair to say that because there's been a lot of them. And they've almost all been at home. The one that you throw in on the road is the Calgary game. But other than that, it's just a slew of home games. They're now 0-4 in the Centennial jerseys. So that's been a nightmare. And yeah, at the end of the game, you end up kind of having a benches clearing brawl after Jonathan Quick took exception to Mason Appleton shooting it into the empty net after the clock had run out. That leads to a whole big thing. And again, we'll get there, once we get to the end of the game. But let's discuss the roster real quick. There were some changes made. Gabe Perreault sat down. That's first and foremost. And I don't disagree with that. He really, he played 3 games. He looked okay against Nashville, which is the only fucking home win for the Rangers. Whoop-de-doo against the Predators. So, again, just totally embarrassing. But yeah, Perreault did not look so great against Tampa or Columbus. And yeah, him going out of Hartford, I think makes total sense. As much as I said, hey, if you want to give him more opportunity, go for it. But if you made the determination that he was not going to be worth being in the top 6, then at that point, I'd much rather him be in Hartford than kind of find a way on the third line. It just wouldn't have been great. On defense, they call up Scott Morrow. So Scott Morrow makes his Ranger debut. Didn't play much. Played less than 10 minutes. He looked all right when he was in there. So what happens here is Will Borgen out again, which is a big loss. The Rangers, have kind of found a way to not give. I mean, look, the Columbus game, they played all right. This game, not so much. Hopefully, Will Borgen will be back soon. Like I said, if he was going to miss one game, if he was going to break that consecutive game streak, then chances were he was not going to just come back the next game. That wasn't going to happen. And to be honest with you, look, it's no guarantee he comes back for the Vegas game. We'll have to wait and see, but that's a very big loss for sure. So Morrow was in, but what happens is they took Vakanainen out of the lineup. So the third pair was Robertson and Morrow. So again, it's one of those situations where, assuming Borgen were to be healthy, it's Robertson and Vakanainen. It's back and forth. But the problem, and I guess I'll bring it up now, given the fact that it was a back-to-back situation and given how much specifically Gavrikov and Fox played the night before, I think you kind of just had to take your lumps with Morrow and just lived with what the result might be. Because I think part of it, and look, it is fairly early in the season. They hadn't played since Wednesday before the Columbus Saturday night game. So don't want to make a huge deal about it. But look, the fact is that especially Gavrikov and Fox, and I'll also say Carson Soucy. Carson Soucy played over 21 minutes. It's a situation where David Quinn, I think, should have tried to balance things out a little bit more. Again, given how much the top defenders played the night before. So, for Scott Morrow, a defenseman, the sixth defenseman, less than 10 minutes, it really, really makes for a lot more action for the rest of the team. Even like Braden Schneider, he played almost 20 minutes. He's more, he's not normally that high. I can live with that one, but again, you see him more 16 to 18 minutes typically. Sometimes even a little bit less, honestly. So, just a lot of ice time. And I think they were a bit worn out. I mean, look, collectively, we could talk individuals, but yeah, like even on that last goal, Carson Soucy kind of got beat by Lucas Raymond, but Adam Fox was also out of position. Like it wasn't a crisp game for Adam Fox at all. Wasn't making great passes, wasn't making great decisions. And so, yeah, Scott Morrow makes his debut. Thought he looked fine, but part of that might be by design where they just simply didn't trust him in more key situations. And I don't totally mind calling up Morrow in the handedness part of it, where with no Borgen, you have a situation where you don't, and look, that's kind of a lack of right-handed defenseman just in the pipeline, which is someone, in Hartford at least. So I don't totally mind Morrow being up and in the game, but at the same time, if he is, you got to use him a little bit more. So it will be interesting to see what they decide to do going out west. Do they decide that Morrow goes on the trip, or do they decide, okay, we're going to maybe more go with a Connor Mackey or something like that? Like, will they decide that Morrow was just a one-game situation and they send it back down? And hopefully Borgen is somehow good enough to go as well. So that's kind of the defensive situation. And again, I just have a little bit of an issue with the way that David Quinn, allotted the ice time there. As far as the forwards went, so of course, Perreault out of the lineup, Brodzinski in. And so Cooley is up with Zibanejad and Miller, and Brodzinski was the one in over Parson, right? It's one of those things that's kind of tough to tell, like, between the two of them, who they prefer. And I don't know, even though both of them can play center and wing, maybe if it's a situation where a center is needed more so, it's Parson. If it's a wing, it's Brodzinski. I don't know if it's that simple, but it's Brodzinski. Honestly, it probably, it's not saying much. Probably the most effective line was the Laba line with Sherry and Brodzinski. It wasn't great, and it was really only for part of the game because penalties kind of took over. Also, the officiating was not good. I'm not going to blame the officiating. The Rangers were simply horrible, but the officiating certainly was not well. And, I think things favored Detroit within that whole situation. Some missed calls on Detroit. So, yeah, not great there. And, a call on the Rangers that probably shouldn't have been, at least one. But yeah, but you're just simply still not getting enough from the big time players. Think about this weekend. All it was goal-wise in regulation was 2 power play goals by Mika Zibanejad. That was it. There was no 5-on-5 goals for the Rangers. Where is JT Miller? Where has the guy been all season? Like I said, he's done well in overtime in the shootout. Where has he been in the 60-minute portion? It's 20 games, 4 goals, 5 assists, 9 points. That is not going to get, that is not even going to come close to getting it done. So Yeah, he continues to really, really be someone that I look at and say is a big reason as to why the struggles are happening. And he's not alone in that either. Believe me, like there is, a lot of that crew is in it, but I think he's kind of the ringleader currently, right? And that could maybe change in a week if somehow he does well and, one of those other guys struggles. But yeah, it's just been not good. So, think I touched on everything there. And yeah, like the Rangers just didn't look good from the outset. And the goalie matchup was Cam Talbot against Jonathan Quick, a rematch of what we saw in Detroit. And Cam Talbot just really wasn't tested much at all in this game. And the Rangers kind of, I guess you could say, weathered the storm. Rangers defensively, especially early, did a pretty decent job. Couldn't get anything going offensively, but I will say, like, the defense got worse and worse and worse as the game moved along, for sure. It just did. It broke down eventually. And the power plays killed them. Detroit, not only did they score power play on Detroit, but they just had chance after chance. And it really killed the Rangers. But first period, yeah, Detroit was definitely the better team for the first 15 minutes or so. But I just really, even though they didn't deserve it, I just wish the Rangers could have found a way to get it to overtime. Just find a way. And if you only get a point, it is what it is, right? But 0 points is what was deserved. But Detroit does take a penalty at 18:41 of the first. Sider interferes with Trocheck, and I don't love those power plays that are cut off in between periods. They aren't successful much when I watch. Maybe it's a Ranger thing, but I think it's just in general, it's tough, right? You kind of feel as if you don't score in that first 120, it's pretty much done. And they don't, and we go into the second period scoreless. And it's interesting because the power play does score in this game, but the power play has not looked as sharp, but yet they have converted a little bit more, so it's just one of those things. But we go to the second period, and this is where the penalties start coming. At 4:04, Gavrikov trips former Ranger Andrew Kopp. The Rangers do kill that off. But then at 7:54, Noah Laba hooks another former Ranger, Patrick Kane. And on this one, with not that much time, that's the thing too, not much time left in it. A lot of the power play goals Rangers given up, and the penalty kill has not been as good lately. Now they rank towards the middle of the pack in the NHL. It has taken a hit, and that was definitely one of the bright spots early on. Alex DeBrincat scores his 9th goal of the season from Lucas Raymond and Patrick Kane. And the Rangers, couldn't really get the puck out of the zone. Matthew Robertson, all night they really couldn't get it out of the zone. I think Robertson was unable to do it at one point. And and Quick was really good. We'll talk about both goals and dissect it a little bit. Again, with Jonathan Quick, it's a different style than Igor Shesterkin. It just is. And so this was one that squeaks by. The shot by Raymond squeaks by Quick, and it was going to go in. DeBrincat almost stole a goal away from Lucas Raymond. It was going to go in if it wasn't touched, but DeBrincat, before it goes over the line, taps it in. And it's one in Detroit. It's one that Quick should have stopped the Raymond shot. But again, when you're under siege like that, it's going to happen, and Detroit deservedly takes the 1-0 lead. But the Rangers do get the response. At 10:12, it's another penalty by Sider, delay a game, which was actually somewhat controversial. So to be fair, and maybe that was correctly called, maybe it wasn't, but it was tough to tell whether that actually did go out of play or not. And the Rangers do score on the power play. It's Zibanejad, his team-leading 7th goal, and he has a lot of power play goals. I want to say he has at least 4 or 5 out of his 7 goals, assisted by Cooley and Panarin. So it's a shot by Panarin from up top that I guess Cooley must deflect it. It must go off of Cooley, and Zibanejad just easily finds it and just buries it into the open net. Nothing Cam Talbot could do about it. The Rangers tied up at 1. So you take that, and at that point, Detroit kind of got the play right back, and kind of thanks to it, 12:54, Sam Carrick called for holding the stick of JT Compher, which a lot of people were upset about, and that could have been hooking on JT. That could have been a penalty on Compher. Instead, it's called on Sam Carrick, but the Rangers find a way to kill a penalty, in large thanks to Jonathan Quick. So we go through 2 periods with the score being tied at 1. And again, it was Detroit really controlled play for the last 5 minutes of that period, at least, maybe a little bit more than that. And we go to the third time at 1. And as bad as it had been through 40 minutes, it was actually way, way worse the final 20. And it's been a thing. The third periods at MSG have really specifically been bad. There was a time when the first periods were not very good. But I feel like they kind of rectified that. This game wasn't a great first period, but the thirds, I think, consistently, whether it's in comeback mode or when it has been tied going to third, which hasn't been too often, in trying to think about some of the other situations. Maybe, trying to think. I guess maybe the Minnesota game. I think Minnesota was 1-1 going into the third. So maybe that one is your best comp just in terms of how the goal scoring went down. But this was a much later goal than that one. That might have been midway or before the third. But let's get there first because there were penalties taken. At 6:39, Will Cooley trips Edvinson. And Cooley has been taking a lot of penalties this year. There's no question. That's part of his game, but he's done it down. And you know what? Noah Laba, as good as Noah Laba has been, before that power play is over, he slashes Emmett Feeney. And so it's a very brief 5-on-3. Rangers do find a way to kill it off. And believe me, Detroit was absolutely all over Jonathan Quick. The chances were very, very prevalent, but they find a way to keep it tied 1-1. But eventually the luck runs out and Detroit breaks through. And it's Lucas Raymond, his 5th goal of the season from Larkin and Sider at 16:13. And this is where it's just a little too aggressive by the Trocheck line and Adam Fox as well. And it leads to this goal. And look, credit Lafreniere for it. He was trying to keep the puck in. Like, there were decent intentions there, but you needed to be smart, especially under 4 minutes left. You just have to be. Like, if you can play even if the offensive chances aren't there, if you can just do the smart things, that's how certain teams make the playoffs. And that's what this Ranger team needs to adopt and truly embrace that, because they don't have the talent. They just don't as well as other teams. So they're going to have to, especially when you're tired, just, I know it's not fun. I know it's, not going to get you goals necessarily, but it may get you points. And so with that Trocheck line, I don't know how long it lasts. Like, as well as it's done at points, and I know 2 years ago as well, last year it wasn't, and just on the defensive side, it's not the best. And so it really needs to do very, very well on the goal scoring side of things. And I think we're going to find a point where I think things do get mixed up within the top 6 at the very least, right? If you want to leave it alone between top and bottom, I just think that, because now, as well as Zibanejad has played, and maybe you can credit some of that to JT Miller, although a lot of Zibanejad's real results have been in the power play, I don't think it's been good enough where, I'm okay with mixing things up. We're not there yet, but and I'm not saying a bold thing because typically line changes do happen. It is rare that you stay with the same line the whole season, but I just think it may come at some point. But anyway, Fox is caught up ice, and Lucas Raymond just simply kind of beats Carson Soucy around the net. And Raymond just ends up kind of in front. And Jonathan Quick, who, look, he moves around a lot, right? Like, he's not a very still, structured positionally goalie. So again, there's probably blame to go around. It's hard with Quick. He was, played so well. So I think a lot of the blame, again, it's all around. It's that Trocheck line for the aggressiveness. And then Fox deserves a lot of blame too. Not only was he aggressive, but he pays attention to Dylan Larkin, but you can't really do that there because Lucas Raymond ends up all alone up front. Carson Soucy playing as much as he has is not great. He's not fleet of foot. We know that. He's a bit on the slower side. Raymond beats him with speed. But just because he does that, you should still have support. For Raymond to end up all alone kind of in front with that great of an opportunity is just a terrible job by all involved. No way around it. It just is. That can't happen, and Detroit takes a 2-1 lead. And then, of course, 6-on-5, the Rangers, down by 1 goal, do not get the job done. I really should look this up. And I'm sure it happened. Maybe I do have some memories of late goals that tied it up in 2024, but I don't know if the goalie was. I'm thinking about a goal that Panarin scored against the Islanders late in the season, but I want to say that was right before. I think it was close to the point of 6-on-5, but I don't think it quite reached it yet. The point is, there probably, and look, that was a President's Trophy winning season, so there likely was some goals that were scored, but none last year, none at all. And 20 games in this year, none now. It's, you can call it luck, you can call it fluky. I don't. I think there's a reason for it, and the chances just aren't even really that great. Part of it is Zibanejad gets set up in some of these advantageous spots and has been whiffing on the puck. Now, I think Mika has been one of the better players, so this isn't me like shitting on him, but just in those situations, you need it to be clean, and it's not.
But again, blame goes all around there. And then what happens at the end is Mason Appleton takes a shot into the empty net. Jonathan Quick at this point's on the bench. And I think Quick, there was just frustration all night long. Really, the frustration should have been taken out of his team, if we're being honest. But Quick goes after Appleton, and first he kind of goes through Dylan Larkin first. I mean, Quick just didn't care. And I'll say there's two things here. Like, on the one hand, I do kind of admire the fire that Jonathan Quick still has at his age, and it's a reason why he is going to be in the Hall of Fame. At the same time, it wasn't that egregious in my opinion. Like, Appleton didn't do it. I don't think Appleton meant it as disrespect. It is one of those, I think, code old school things. But it is kind of sad though that Quick was the one that took, he was offended by it and no one else was. Like, and again, I don't like, you just wish that it wasn't Quick. Like, here it was, he was trying to save the Rangers, and yet he was the one guy who wasn't even on the ice that got mad at it. Like, Panarin just kind of skated by. And I can look at the end of the day, I can see both sides. But what it does, it incites a benches clearing brawl. It wasn't crazy in the sense of like punches being thrown, but it was an interesting look with the Rangers and Red Wings both in their Centennial jerseys. Rangers in blue, Red Wings in red. You don't normally see that type of, clashing of colors. So it actually made for a pretty cool looking picture, but still not great. We'll see if Jonathan Quick receives any disciplinary action. I don't think he will. Maybe he's fined. But I don't think anything of real significance probably comes of it. But yeah, I mean, Detroit wins 2-1. Dog shit effort by the Rangers in this game. I hope that Mike Sullivan is back soon for many reasons. Most importantly, for his family, but still for this team, they definitely need his guidance and direction behind the bench for sure. I mean, we don't want to see too much more of David Quinn calling the shots behind the bench. I mean, the fact that he's even on the staff is still pretty crazy when you think about it. So now the Rangers hit the road to take on a Vegas team that is tough. They don't really have great goaltending at the moment. Vegas, it's a weird record. It's 8-4-6. And what that tells me is you're likely looking at probably a close game, right? Where Vegas, they don't have many regulation losses, but a lot after regulation 6. So they're good at getting points. They don't necessarily have a lot of wins. And they haven't been amazing this year by any means, right? But Vegas is obviously a perennial playoff team since their existence. I think maybe they might have missed it once at most. This is a tough team. Rangers have had some success. They actually won in Vegas last year. But other years, I mean, the going's been tough. Goal scoring in Vegas has been tough. And, but the Rangers' road success has been there. And then they, it's kind of a day in between. They go to Colorado, who's been the best team in the league. So even though Rangers have actually really done well at Colorado in recent years, that's going to be hard. And then at Utah, who is maybe now coming down to earth a little bit, but they've gotten off to a nice start. So we'll see. Can the Rangers' road success continue? It really needs to with how bad the team has been at home. And so another Western type swing, right? We saw them go to Western Canada and Seattle. Now they go from Vegas to Colorado to Utah, and then they'll head back home to take on St. Louis. And, that'll be, Thanksgiving week. So decent amount of games there for the Rangers, actually. I think 4 games from Monday through Saturday that week. But here, a little bit of a lighter slate, but still tough too. Pretty quick. I mean, there is a day in between, but a pretty quick turnaround to Vegas. And Vegas hasn't been that great lately. They'll be coming off of a loss in overtime to Minnesota. So the same type of turnaround. But yeah, hope Will Borgen makes his way back. They need him. Rangers goal scoring continues to mainly be a problem, especially at home, but just in general. And yeah, Rangers dropped to 10-8-2 on the season. And yeah, just a really, really bad loss to the Detroit Red Wings. Yet again, losing the back end of the back-to-back set at home. So trends continuing for the New York Rangers. Jonathan Quick did everything he could to keep the Rangers in this game, but he was unsuccessful. The Rangers lose in regulation 2-1 at home to the Detroit Red Wings, and now they will head out west for a 3-game road trip that starts against the Vegas Golden Knights.